Yu-Gi-Oh! Is neck deep into the Year of Fire, so it's hard to see much past the egregious Tier 0 meta that costs about 3 months of my rent to actually play. However, there is hope for the rest of us yet. If we allow ourselves to look past the Tier 0 Snake Eyes meta and a couple stinky extra deck staples like SP Little Knight and Superstar Slayer Typhon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is arguably the most affordable it has been in quite a long time. Thanks to products like the structure decks over the years and the huge impact of Rarity Collection 1, staples that once priced out most casual players are incredibly accessible. Additionally, the 2023 Megatins reprinted a good number of competitive archetypes that are still worth their salt now. Today, I'd like to give you 10 decks that are not only easy on the wallet, but all have the chance of walking away with a tournament at any given time. Now, a quick disclaimer, by no means are these the best decks in the room, and some decks are going to be easier to play than others. I am purely going off results from tournaments over the last 3 months or so, and the estimated costs of decks via the second-hand market. Deck number 1, Dino Morphia. Get your life point calculators ready because it's morphin' time. This high-stakes, high-reward deck can completely lock down the field with their oppressive control effects and high-impact counter traps that your opponent simply cannot respond to. Using old favorites like Solemn Warning in addition to new picks like Iron Thunder and Soul of the Supreme King, there's hardly anything that can stop this deck, as long as you're able to stop any straight battle or effect damage. This deck can easily be attained for under $100 completely from scratch. Deck number 2, Virtual World. Virtual World has been one of those decks that has been around for quite a few years now, fading in and out of the tier lists, but never completely counted out. With no archetypal locks to speak of and a fearsome boss monsters of Shenshen, this deck can easily walk away with matches. The player also gets incredible flexibility with build varieties, whether you want to splash in the Psychic Punks, the Flexible Adventures, or dedicate some extra deck space to the new Armored Xyz cards. The main deck is rather cheap thanks to multiple reprints, and even with some generic extra deck staples in Barone and Zeus, the deck is easily affordable at around $80. Deck number 3, Tenyi Sword Soul. Sword Soul has been competitive ever since its release back in late 2021, and has continued to top events ever since. Being able to wield powerful worm monsters in the Tenyi, these sword-bearing companions are not alone in their quest to take down tournaments. Reliable, consistent, and disruptive are all words I would use to describe Sword Soul. If you want a deck that's not only a proven tournament winner, but also a long-term investment, Sword Soul might just be for you. Deck number 4, Floowandereeze. Anyone more familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Saw this spot coming, but it's hard to talk about competitive budget decks without talking about those blasted birds. Flu's strengths lie in being so incredibly different from any other deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! That they can easily cheese wins out from better players and better decks. Even in the midst of a Tier 0 format, Flu is still able to wriggle its way to a win. While many will say that Flu is mindless, there is still a major difference from a good Flu player to a newer one. Just like with Sword Soul, this deck has been competitive for years and it's never really going to change anytime soon, especially with generic Winged Beast support that randomly drops every now and again. Deck number 5, Runic. Much like Floowandereeze, Runic is special because it plays so differently from any other deck. As opposed to summoning monsters to do your deeds and eventually close out the game by dropping your opponent's life points down to 0, you instead seek to banish every single card in their deck until they give up or run out of cards to draw, and thus lose by deck out. Runic has seen great success being splashed in a wide variety of decks as an advantage engine combined with a substitute for traditional hand traps, but you can easily see just as much success playing a pure variant. Pure Runic is usually associated with stun for a good reason. With help from powerful floodgates like There Can Be Only One and preventing your opponent from killing you in the way of Messenger and Peace, meaning the Runic Wings, or Synchro Zone, your opponent might be very well helpless to stop your game plan. Deck number 6, Kashtira. This is our first deck that is significantly pricier than the rest, but hear me out. The Kashtira field spell is getting a reprint in Rarity Collection 2, and many other cards will be reprinted from Photon Hypernova in the upcoming Yuga Kaiba tin. So while it may be pricier now, this oppressive force could easily be accessible in the future. Even now, builds such as Speedroid Kashtira exist as a more affordable variant, despite being more Speedroid than Kashtira. Besides, cards like Hashira Fenrir will be competitively relevant for years to come unless you decide to slap it onto the Forbidden and Limited list, so your investment won't go to waste here. Deck number 7. Plants. The Plant Soup deck that is primarily titled Plant Link consists of many archetypes revolving around the plant type. Just like its naming convention, this deck is incredibly tricky to get a hand on for the average player. The combos are non-linear and convoluted, so it takes a particular duelist to steer to victory. But if you fancy yourself the gardener to let the seed of success grow, you may just find yourselves leaving your opponent smelling the aroma of defeat. Even despite the recent limiting of some plants' best cards, this deck still finds a way to grow into a tournament topping every now and again, especially with the newer aroma cards and any upcoming plant support. Deck number 8. 8-Axis OTK. What more fitting of a deck to put at the number 8 slot than this? This isn't so much of an archetype than it is a game plan. Essentially, your goal here is to run over your opponent in the way of huge level 8 guys that either overlay into powerful boss monsters and or take down your opponent's life points before they gain a sense of what's happening. Most duelists are not ready for an opponent that wants to go second, so dropping a kaiju on their precious boss monster then going in for the kill will get you a surprising amount of success. Deck number 9. Exo Sister. Lesbians, Exo Sisters, is a graveyard-focused deck, not in that they make their plays from there, but more so in that they attempt to completely lock out your opponent from touching their graveyard or face the wrath of sweeping floodgates and or disruptive banishing on either turn. Much like many of the other decks on this list, this is a deck that will always be meta relevant to a degree due to the simple fact that many decks depend on their graveyard to live. Necro Valley is one of the best field spells ever printed, and with most of your boss monsters being Necro Valley on legs, what can go wrong? I quick want to shout out some decks that could have easily made this list but have a few things that made me hesitant compared to the others. Honorable mention number 1, Sprite. This is a deck that is bound to get some necessary reprints in the upcoming tins that would drastically lower the price of entry for what is a consistent and powerful deck that allows for an insane build variety. But until those reprints are confirmed, we'll have to keep it here for now. Honorable mention number 2, Plunder Patrol. A fan favorite that always seems to creep into the metagame when people least expect it. Builds with Adventure and Labyrinth show immense potential, but this deck has not seen any documented success in nearly half a year, so it does not quite make the list. Honorable mention number 3, Pearly. Many of Pearly's more pricey cards have been confirmed to get reprints in the upcoming Rarity Collection too, but not all of the cards have been confirmed, and that sadly does not cover the pricey extra deck cards like Typhon and Sky Striker Ace Azalea that Pearly needs more so than other decks to truly be competitive. Deck number 10, Branded Chimera. For the last deck, the one I believe to be strongest in the budget categories is the only real deck that uses the brand new illusion type. Even not having to rely on silly gimmick puppet locks, the Chimera deck can utilize powerful fusion monsters and generate insane advantages with the help of fusion summoning on your opponent's turn with Chimera Fusion and of course, Super Polymerization. Additionally, this deck will only get better as the illusion type itself gets better. Upcoming cards like Nightmare Apprentice and Diabellstar's Mean Sister will only increase this deck's consistency and end board power respectively. Don't let this chimera of a deck pass you by. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my first Yu-Gi-Oh video. As is with most of my videos, I kinda just have this spontaneous urge to make this. Will I make more top 10s? Will I make more Yu-Gi-Oh content? Well, that just depends on how well y'all react to this one. Well, I've talked your ear off plenty already, so I'll be going now. Make sure to get to bed on time and drink plenty of water. Take care.